Hello my darling doves, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I've been reading recently. Hi, I just wanted to pop in here and say you will hear fans on in the background. I'm not even going to really apologize for it. It's sweltering. I'm just saying that that's what that sound is. So I've been on a huge romance kick lately. In fact, most of the books I'm going to be talking to you about are romance books. All of them are adult, some I would consider maybe new adult, but I guess we could just jump into it. So the first book I read was, spoiler alert, by Olivia Dade. So we're following our main characters, Marcus and April, and Marcus is this really, I would consider it close to Game of Thrones style star on this TV show. He, however, writes like fanfic on the side because he's not very happy with how the writers are portraying his character, or any of the characters, specifically the female characters on the show. And then April is a huge fan of this. She's kind of at this crossroads in her life where she's like leaving this one job and she kind of wants to be more proud of like her fandom work and just her participation in fandom in general. And then these two basically know each other online in the fandom space but don't know that they know each other, and then one thing leads to another and they end up meeting in real life and things divulge from there. I overall really liked this. I gave it a 4 out of 5, I believe. I actually really enjoyed the writing. I thought it was super easy to breeze through. It was very fanficky. My only issue was kind of the dynamic with our female protagonist and her mother. I felt like it was kind of triggering, but also I was just kind of hoping that that aspect wouldn't be in there. So that was kind of a little bit of a downfall for me. It wasn't that she isn't self-confident. I was just kind of hoping for a more positive relationship in that way, but like, you know, I get it. So there's that. Also, I just want to say I love Marcus so much. The next book I read is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. What can I say? I kind of love this. I give it a 4.5 out of 5 only because like I do feel it's a teeny bit too long. If it was like 25-50 pages shorter, 5-star for sure. Like if you think you enjoy this type of romance, please pick it up because I loved it. We're following Nora and Charlie is just the best. Listen, I love Nora, but something about Charlie in this, I was like, I need to keep reading. I am obsessed with him. They're both in the writing world. One is an editor and one is like an agent. But I really appreciated the kind of focus on sister relationships between Nora and Libby. Libby, our main protagonist's sister. And I really enjoyed that part of this, honestly. I was not expecting there to be that much of a relationship between the sisters, but I loved it, and I kind of think that if I liked this, I'll probably like a lot more of Emily Henry's books in general. But yeah, honestly, overall, if you think that you like this kind of contemporary romance, I would only just say it's a little long for my preference, but it's very good, and I think it's overall a very solid read. The next book I read was actually a reread, and it was Of Red, White, and Royal Blue. And so I read this in 2019 or early 2020, I can't remember, but I heard there was going to be an adaptation and I saw who they cast and I was a little bit worried about it, I'm not gonna lie, but then I saw the trailer and it seems really corny but in like an incredibly cute way, so I will be tuning in. The reread was super quick and there are obviously kind of cringy aspects to this and a few things that I wouldn't say tone deaf, but they're like, you know, they didn't age well and this book isn't that old, so I'll say that. I overall just love the dynamic of kind of the tortured royal trope, so I eat this up every single time. I just think that dynamic between Alex and Henry is so good and I love it. So if you haven't read this and you want to watch the adaptation, I'd say definitely maybe check out the book. I don't think it needs more press, but it's cute. So the next book I read is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. Okay, I have complicated feelings on this book. It took me ages to finish this book, by the way. I read this for literally probably 2 years, and that is because I lost my copy of this book not once, but 2 times. I eventually found it. I had the dust jacket, I couldn't find the actual physical book, so I found the book and I finished it. And I think my issue is, you pitched this book to me on paper, and I'm obsessed with it. In the execution and the writing style, it's just not my thing. I think I learned in this reading process that kind of the poetic prose style is just not my thing. And because of that, I was having a really hard time getting through this. And I personally did not enjoy it, but I know that it is incredibly unpopular opinion. I give this like a 2, a 2.5, probably a 2.5 if I read it all in one sitting and didn't lose it literally for probably almost a year in total. So I think that this is definitely worth a shot. If you like that type of writing, you'll probably love it. I just personally don't gel with it. So yeah. The next book I read is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I'm probably the last person on the planet to read this, but listen guys, I got through the first chunk of this book in an evening and I was devouring it. Something about the writing here really worked for me. If you don't know, it's a historical retelling and it follows Achilles and Patroclus. And it's a beautiful coming of age romance, but also well into adulthood. I personally really loved this. I got nervous during the beginning of the war that it was losing me. I was like, oh my gosh, like I was obsessed with this and now I feel myself slowly starting to like dwindle, but then it like hooked me back in eventually and I ended up really loving this. I do not cry that easily when I'm reading, and I did get teary-eyed at least 3 or 4 times at the end of this book, so I was very surprised by that reaction from me, especially because I knew like what I was getting into and I still got very emotional at the end. So if you haven't read this, try it. You'll probably get at least something out of it. And then the final book, which I actually just finished earlier today, is The Charm Offensive. I absolutely, again, devoured the first 150 pages of this and I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be a new favorite book. I'm gonna be obsessed with this. And then something just happened and I kind of just got disappointed pretty quickly, but I overall still really liked the ending. I think my main issue is I wish we delved more into the character of Dev. I think we got a little bit more sympathy towards Charlie than we did Dev, and I think that's what bothered me when I was reading this book. So basically, this show is kind of like The Bachelor, if you're familiar with that, which I'm sure even if you don't watch it, you kind of know the gist like I do. We have like a prince on this dating show and then a bunch of women who like basically compete to be crowned the princess at the end. So Charlie here, he is our contestant, and then Dev works on the show because he's obsessed with like this fairy tale love romance, and he has been since he was a kid, and he finally gets on the show and he's like one of the producers and handlers, and he usually handles the princesses, the female contestants, but this time he gets put in charge of Charlie because Charlie's just an absolute wreck. And then of course they end up falling in love, but I kind of just had some issues with it around like the 3/4 of the way mark when I kind of realized we weren't going to be digging into these characters more. I do think that if someone did an adaptation of this, you could showcase more characterization, and I overall still enjoyed it. I gave it a 3.5. If we're getting crazy, maybe 3.75, but I don't know, I just think it could have been better and I really wanted it to be better, and it just felt a little flat for me 3/4 of the way through. I do think that Dev Patel and Andrew Garfield would be incredible if they did a live action adaptation of this, so that's just me personally though. Alright, and I guess I'll just talk about really briefly, I've barely touched these, the books that I want to read next. So, Pizza Girl and Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. I'm like 26 pages into Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, and I have not yet touched Pizza Girl, but these are the 2 books I want to read next. If you liked hearing me talk about the books I read recently, please consider subscribing, like this video, comment down below your opinions on any of the books I mentioned, or your favorite book you've read recently, or if you have a recommendation for me based on any of this. Thank you, I love you, goodbye! I'm sure that sounded lovely.